Welcome back to another episode of this special podcast series all about my new book, The Rest Revolution: How to Reclaim Your Rhythm and Conquer Burnout When Overworking Has Become the Norm.
Mm.
Today, I have an absolutely special treat for all of you listening because I am here today with none other than the rest queen herself, Octavia Raheem. Now, Octavia is, she's more than a writer about rest. She is a rest practitioner, a coach, a healer. Um, I have had the honor and pleasure, the sacred pleasure of resting in retreat with her on a mountaintop in Georgia. And let me tell you, it was powerful. It is powerful. It's transformational. It's everything that you read about and you're like, how is this possible? It's possible.
Mm.
And so, welcome to the Rest Revolution podcast series, Octavia. I'm so glad that you're here.
Amanda, I'm so happy to be here. I just keep smiling.
Mhm.
Like, I'm just
Same.
I'm just happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And what's really exciting, even more exciting than just us coming together today, is the fact that you have a new book out too. Tell us about your book, baby.
My
Your
book
newest book,
baby.
baby.
Thank you. So, Amanda, I love that we have. I just was thinking about, oh, we have twins. In book time,
Mhm.
mine is October 29th and then you are November 13th. I'm like, that's just a minute
Mhm.
if we were in labor time. And so that feels beautiful and synchronistic and powerful. Um, Rest is Sacred is a book of poetry, prose, prayers, and I even say prophecy
Mm.
around what a rested life makes possible for us. Reading Rest is Sacred is a rest practice in and of itself. I wrote it to not be read in one sitting, to not be devoured. I wrote it to be sipped and savored like you would a good cup of tea or your favorite coffee. I know you love coffee.
Mm.
Um, and the way I wrote Rest is Sacred was literally this: I would rest and then I would write. I would rest some more and then I would write. Clearly there's revising, editing, there's more to the process, but the meat of what it became the book was written in rest. And I believe in a power of transmission, right? What was influencing and impacting me as I created the book, I believe transfers to the reader. And so I'm excited for it to come forward, to see it's like a different way of delivering to me. Like, I've been writing prose, I've been writing a lot of things. I've always been a poet though, but I've
Yes.
kind of like kept that close to my heart.
Same.
And I'm like, grew up Black Baptist, so we praying, but to write out prayers. I feel really exposed. Someone asked me today, like, how are you feeling just a few days out? And I was like, I feel everything. I feel everything you could feel. And thank goodness for a rest practice that allows me to have the capacity to be with the feelings without running from them or being overwhelmed by them. I'm like, I feel excited. I feel even dread. Not like some existential dread, but just like it's coming, it's coming, it's coming no matter what. I said, I feel scared, I feel courageous, I feel brave, I feel ready. I feel like it's time, right? I feel all the things.
I love
Um, so Rest is Sacred is probably here by the time you're hearing this. And I can't thank you enough for being in your own delivery and for being in your own
delivery
s-
room. I'm in the
yes,
waiting
right
room.
here. You're right here. We been we been wheeled up in here, or if we're doing a home birth, the tub is getting full, filled up right now. I cannot thank you enough for being in your own delivery and making space and holding space for me and everyone else that you're bringing into the space of your podcast, because You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, and yet you are. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. I was so excited to talk about rest is sacred, and I skipped right over Octavia. So, why don't you tell the people listening to us just a little bit about you? Like I said, you're this healer and restorative coach. How did you get into the rest space? Because you do more than write books. You really hold space and help heal people. So what do you do when you're not writing books? Tell the people about your life,
thank
your world, the
thank you.
world of Octavia.
You know, so I'm a restorative yoga teacher and a yoga nidra teacher and a yin yoga teacher and a meditation teacher and a folk lady, like country lady. And I just kind of put all of that together to create rest centric experiences that have a lot of soul and a lot
Mhm.
of safety and that feel like home. How I arrived to the place of being a rest practitioner is somewhat unlikely. It was my own episode of severe burnout that held up a mirror and said, "No more, we're not living like this anymore, sis." And what I mean by that is I became a devotee to rest or began my journey to being devoted to rest in a hospital bed where I lay suffering from a condition called rhabdomyolysis, which is rapid muscular breakdown from
Oh.
overusage of muscles. Now, you don't get to the place where you're working your body out or working your body to the point of muscular overusage without there being some mental fatigue and emotional fatigue and likely spiritual fatigue that already was the first layer of symptom. You know, by the time
Mhm.
something's impacting the body, it's been
It's already.
impacting us on all the other. And so, um, and this was at this point almost 15 years ago. That I'll tell you my daily schedule at that time. I usually got up around 4:35, went to work out, did these really hardcore workouts,
Mhm.
then would run home, make a half a smoothie, halfway drink that, speed off to work where I was a public school, middle school teacher. I was always the one arriving early, leaving late, but then I was building this kind of side business. Back then, I called it hustle. I don't use that word so liberally anymore. I would run off to do that. And then I thought I had to work out twice a day because I had a disordered relationship with that, name it what it is. So, and then I would speed home and grade papers, do whatever I needed to do to prepare for the next day, crash into bed, rinse, repeat,
Mm.
right?
I'm tired just hearing all
That was, but that, so that
that.
was my day.
Mhm.
And it's, I'm sure the listener, maybe you've had days that felt like that. A few years of doing that, my body just crashed, right? And there were other signals that I needed to slow down or stop or take better care. I just blew through them until boom, now I'm in the hospital.
What were some of the signals?
Oh, so I'll tell you another major one was falling asleep at a red light in the middle of like a urban downtown, like just I was so and I like literal physical exhaustion. I'm driving along, and you think there's no way I'm going to fall asleep at the wheel. Like, how do people do that? And I fell asleep. But the signal to me wasn't the falling asleep. It was what happened when the light turned green and everyone started blowing at me to go. I sat there crying because I had to wake up and I had to continue on. And it was dawning on me that I needed a damn, if I can cuss on a podcast, a red light, an external red light for me to stop. I needed a red light to stop. So, but then back up to that, some of the signals were just a lot of irritation and frustration and feeling stuck, but not knowing what to do. And because I didn't know what to do, but I knew how to do, meaning keep on
Mhm.
doing stuff, I just would keep on the hamster wheel of like, well, maybe if I do more, maybe if I try this, maybe if I sign up for like I thought I could work my way out of the mental fatigue I was experiencing because like I know how to work and I know how to do like so many of us. And when that wasn't working, I was like, oh goodness, you know? Um, so I would say those were some of my red flags. And also just doing things, but not being fulfilled or finding pleasure in things that I previously found joy and pleasure in.
Mm.
Like the symptoms of burnout. You wrote about it, right? But they were there. Um, Lots of kind of social fatigue. I didn't want to be around people, but then I would be. But then here we are back in a loop of irritation. So all of these small bumps were coming up, and I just thought I could work through them. I could keep going through them. Maybe if I do more,
Right.
or maybe I'll add this. Like I thought I could do more power yoga and it will help me, which is also part of how I came to know, my dear, the yoga you need is restorative. You don't
Mhm.
need to be in 100-degree room doing push-ups right now. But I didn't. It took a hard lesson for me to learn that. So to make this very long story short, I'm laying in a hospital room after having this really challenging physical breakdown that clearly was on its way through the mental and emotional challenges or burnouts or breakdowns. And I had a nurse who looks at me and she's like, "Why are you here?" I'm feeling bad and rude. So I go, you got my chart. And she goes, "Okay,
Ooh,
sweetie." And
Octavia.
this nurse, I know, this nurse, she sat down with me. She put her hand very close to me and she said, "I know." Like, it's like, she was like, "Okay, let me just go ahead and get with you since you want to be this way." And she said, I, s- I know what your condition is on paper. I'm just wondering what you're running from, you
Mm.
know? And then we get, what's the other thing? Like sometimes I think that, not think, I know that oftentimes we are working and not pausing or
Yes.
slowing down or stopping because there's something we'll face if we do. And so
Yes.
we just keep running. And so she goes, "What you running from?" And now I'm crying. I'm sitting in the hospital bed crying. And then she moved in closer and I was like, I don't know if nurses do this, but she did. She said, I got a scripture for you. And she said, "Be still and know."
Mm.
And I knew that scripture. And in that moment, I was so grateful for her knowing to repeat that to me. And then she turned on, there was some church TV she turned on. She was like, "And I need you to sit here and look at this." And I didn't really look at that, but those words, "be still and know," was a lullaby and a siren at the same time, saying, "You have got to wake up and you have got to trust that there is more to life than what you can do and produce, and something else is holding you. You don't have to hold it all, you don't have to
Mm.
do it all. And there's a knowing that you can only access in stillness."
Mm.
And so since then, I've been saying stillness is a movement. Like,
Yeah.
stillness is a movement. Like, because for me, and I can't say I instantly was like, "And now I'm going to rest."
Right.
That was, she woke me up. Right? She woke me up fiercely and gently. It was both. And sometimes we need both. We need someone who's going to gather us and then hold us really tenderly once they gather us. And she did both. And it's the kind of coach and teacher I strive to be, right? Like, I gather you in and then hold you, because that's what we need, right? Because it's very tender, this exhaustion, this overworking, this
Yeah.
I can't stop, the what I'm running from it ain't just chasing me, it was chasing my mama, it was
Yeah.
chasing my grandmama. I don't want it to chase my daughter or my son, but always trying to prove, right? So I needed to be held in that. And I didn't instantly wake up, but I didn't instantly know exactly what to do, but I did wake up to, oh, right, movement isn't the only way to make progress, which sounds so wild, but that scripture, "Be still and know," has been my anchor.
Mm.
It calls me back again and again just to like inquire, like, what else does it mean? What
Mm.
else is being communicated in that? Know what? Know who? Know how? When I'm still okay. So you asked about me.
Mhm.
Like, I write about rest, but really the writing about rest is an overflow of my devoted rest practice. First as a student, And then, as one who really studied all these different traditions that speak to the power of stillness and rest over a lot of time, and then the words were like, okay, this is another way to continue teaching. Because also, there's just one of me, and I feel really strongly, and I know you know this as a writer, is that the teaching can just multiply, the offering can multiply. It becomes so much more accessible when there's like a text, you know.
Yes.
And my second book, Pause Rest Be, has like restorative practices in it, and step by step, here's how you do this practice that can be really supportive. You just need some pillows and some blankets, and here's what you do, you know. And so the writing about rest really was born from my own lived experience, just trying to save my own life, and then ultimately
Mhm.
realizing that how I have been saving my life would likely support other people being saved. And also, the words came after I rested.
Mm. That's one of the most powerful things that I you have experiences and you do things and you don't know that you're doing them, so you don't have awareness to repeat the thing you're doing that's working. You just kind of maybe fall into it. And I love at your rest and writing retreats where you will have us, you know, rest, basically go to sleep together in a big circle. And then you gently wake us up and you say, okay, right, what came to you? And I remember at the recent retreat, I was waiting for revelations and they came. They came after those periods of stillness and sleep. And I think, you know, if I look back on when revelations have come to me at other points on my journey, I think there absolutely has been a stillness involved, but I wasn't aware of the connection.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so that in and of itself is will set someone free, thinking that like the key to the next big idea or breakthrough or innovation is doing more, reading more, listening more, seeing more, when the key may be for you to close your eyes and just fade into, you know, into rest and then resurface and see what was synthesized, you know, during that moment of stillness. So I encourage you to try it if you haven't. But Octavia, I
Shout out
want
to
to know.
rest.
Shout out to Rest, okay? Shout out to the Rest Nest. Can you can you talk about rest? I mean, I just love a good rest nest. You taught us how to make those. My daughter now likes to make a rest nest. Like she understands if she comes up to my office area and she sees the yoga mat and the yoga blankets and me with my eye pillow, she's like, "Oh, you're in your rest nest? Let me make my rest nest."
You know, I am sitting on my rest nest right now. I'm not going to move the camera. But I have to give the due credit to my sister, teacher, comrade, and friends, um, Tracy Stanley and Dr. Shanti Takarante Perez. They introduced me to the rest nest, and I'm sure they could tell you who introduced them to the rest nest. But the way Shanti introduced it, or Dr. Shanti, I call her now, she just defended and, she's a doctor now. She said, what do you do in a nest? What do birds do in a nest?" And we're all like, we're in a class or a training room. It's like, oh, they sleep, they're nourished. That's it. And then she said, "You see them, just gather this and gather this, gather from what they have." So that's the first thing. Because sometimes people think, I got to go out here and buy something new because we like to buy something new. And if you want to, do, but you probably have some favorite pillows, some bolsters, some things around your house that speak to comfort for you. And so first, I learned about the rest nest from my teachers and friends, Shanti and Tracy. And then second is this gathering of the things that make you feel held and
Mm,
cozy, like the blankets, the pillows, the mats. And sometimes, like for me, I have a church pew around me. You might bring in around your nest pictures of people you love or people who passed on. You just gather what you have that makes you feel held, and you lay it down, organize it in a way that you want it, and you
mhm.
lay your body inside that nest. It's really beautiful.
It's really
Isn't
beautiful.
it beautiful?
It's
And
so
yeah, that's what I can say about a rest nest is it is beautiful. It don't always look pretty, but it's beautiful.
because nests don't always look pretty. Sometimes
They
nests
don't.
are a mess,
Messy,
but
yes.
they get the job done.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
can you tell us how you got from that hospital bed to talking on a podcast about rest and healing women and holding space for them in retreats and programs and classes and activations? How did
Yeah.
you, because you were living, the busy burnout life,
Mm.
and now you are resting, writing, and helping others rest. So how did you transform your life? That's
Yeah. Thank you.
quite a
That's a
switch.
beautiful question, and it's a question that the answer I think will serve, right? So Rumi says the wound is where the light enters. And
Mm,
I often tell people, I'm like, I am staying close to the hem of the garment that I need to make sure I'm wrapping myself in. And I'm staying close to the medicine that, like, my particular makeup and chemistry really need me to stay close to. And I'm saying all that to say that I think I'm not teaching out of my wound. I understood that I needed to be in consistent and intentional healing of that wound of like must overwork, must prove, must do, like fill in the blank, right? Um, Lack of self worth. Like I have to be attending to that wound in order to hold space for other people to do it with authenticity. And so, what happened in that hospital bed was a new awareness dawned. Be still and know, right? I have not considered what that means. I have dismissed that as for someone else, not me. So the first thing that had to start shifting was my mind state around. So my body had this breakdown, and then it called my mind into the room like, you've got to pay attention.
right.
And I needed new thoughts. The nurse gave me a new idea to consider, and I needed to be willing to even just entertain it. Which, say, someone listening right now, they turned on a podcast that had the word rest in it. Because sometimes people are like, I can't do it. I'm like, you turned this podcast on, something's already shifting. You haven't turned it off yet, something's already shifting, right? And so, okay, new thought. I had to also feel the full impact of all that had gotten me into the place where I was experiencing that level of burnout. I couldn't bypass that. I had to be like, this does not feel good. I had to actually feel my feelings and feel the pain of that. And I couldn't actually do that alone. I needed some resources. I needed therapy. I needed
Mhm.
coaching, right? I needed a community of practitioners, right? What I did do when I got out of the hospital room, instead of, I really wanted to go back to power yoga. I really did. Because, like, it's so easy to backslide. You would think, didn't
It
you? Just like,
is
but like, that was my programming. That was my schedule. That's what I believed, would
muscle memory.
just all of that, right? We know why the pattern is deep. It's deeper than me, right? I didn't make this pattern up, And however, remembering be still and know, I think people need mantras. I'm like, you have got to get when the old pattern comes in, you have to interrupt it with something, interrupt it with a new thought, right?
Mhm,
And so instead of going back to power yoga, I went back to yin yoga class. And I
mhm.
did not like it. It's very stillness based. You just sit there, you hold the practice, you hold the poses 5 minutes. I sat there for the first half of that first class thinking, this is the biggest waste of time. And I looked around at everyone. I was so irritated at people who had this like blissful, accepting look on their face. I was like, I could be doing push-ups right now. Like, like, but the thing is, I stayed and I remember it was around minute 50 of a 90-minute class where something shifted. And then I said, okay, I'll come back. I'll do this once a week. Why am I belaboring this point? So I had to be willing to have a different set of at least one new thought about rest and work or stillness and movement. And then I needed I had to be honest with myself about what additional resources I needed to hold the shifts that I was making. And then I also put in tuck out the power yoga and put in at least once a week practice that said you're going to be still, Octavia. And then I started how I was rinsing and repeating all the things that led to burnout. I was like, let
Mhm.
me rinse and repeat that, but
Mhm.
not too much at one time. I didn't go, let me do 10 stillness classes. I was like,
Right.
I will try one and then I'll go back to that one. And I'll be with the discomfort of this is a new way of moving and being a different pattern. And so I guess to speed this up, which is funny to be like, we're talking about rest. Let me speed up my story. But that one class became two classes, and I'm always curious about like when I experience things that really helped me. I go, well, what's happening here? So I wanted to go learn and study like what is happening in yin yoga, what is happening in restorative yoga, what's yoga nidra anyway? Why does this work? But I didn't want to figure out why it worked to teach it to other people. At least I thought when I was doing these trainings, I wanted to understand it more for myself. It's just how I am as a learner. And as I would train more and study more and learn more and experience how nourishing and transformational and fiercely kind and holding and embracing these practices were, and I was a yoga teacher already, I was like, oh, I should teach these. Because I
Mm.
started weaving them into my more active classes, and people responded rapidly to I
Mhm.
could drop in 10 additional minutes of stillness and people walk out and be like, whoa. Even, sometimes people would be like me, kind of like, I don't like it. But then people were like, that makes a difference. You
Mhm.
know, and I'm like, yes. And I was just like, how like things here's a maybe a paradox that things can shift more quickly when we slow down and we're still. You know
Mm.
what I'm saying? Like it
I
felt
love
like I had
that.
been practicing like all these other like kind of like more physically demanding yogas for years, and my it was helping me physically, my pants look good and stuff. It was not shifting my inner stuff as
Mhm.
swiftly as like intentional stillness was.
Mm.
And that for me, and I could see it in my students, and I was like, oh, this is something right here.
Mhm.
So how'd I get here one step at a time? One
Yes.
new thought at a time. And also I cannot understate finding the community of like you there are people who are on a fast track to burnout and then they get right back on that track and they keep in that loop. And if you keep in that loop with them, you just gonna be in that loop. You gotta
Mhm.
come over here and hang out with me and Amanda. That's like get the books, get a book club that's like, let's investigate these and like you might even be in a conflict with some of the ideas presented, but it's like that's okay. I can't understate how important community is when you're trying to get
Mm.
interrupt a pattern that I keep saying
Mhm.
is older than you, right? We got this from someplace. We exist within a system that will just like run you ragged if you let it. I
Yes.
hope that answered your
Oh, it's so
question.
good. It's so it answered, it asked, it did all the things. In community, that is such a great point. One of the principles in or the realignments that I write about in the Rest Revolution is realigning your misaligned relationship with other people and connection, because for so many of us who are operating under this machine mindset that dictates that our time is best used in service of productivity. Um, we discard the things that do not, or we feel do not help us be more productive. And I've
Mm.
found with my executive coaching clients, those close relationships are one of the first casualties, sadly, of a burnout prone person. And so they are not only dealing with the physical exhaustion that is a result of overwork, but they're dealing with the exhaustion of isolation and loneliness. So when you think
Mm.
about retreats and the power of communal rest and coming together, being in a room, and I have experienced it for myself. So I can just nod and hum and rock and roll. That's my new thing that you just taught me how to rock. um, Talk about what happens when we gather and we um, put intention toward our healing in the same space together. Like, what happens when that happens? And also, follow up, what made you go from teaching the yoga classes to really holding space for exhausted women like me in your retreats? And
Mm.
those two things, two different things. But I was like,
The
I gotta, I'm having my senior moments. I gotta get it out before I lose it.
um, those are two questions. I think I'll back my way in. Really, it was a student of mine who is a brilliant, brilliant woman and attorney. And she'd be coming to my classes and she was like, I need more of this and I need to step outside of my kind of day-to-day space doing this. And I see a lot of other people leading retreats. Sis, you need to come with it, right? So really it was a student who said, um, this resonates with me and I will come if you do this. And I said, okay. It was really, and then she also said, I will bring more people with me. I will bring more women like me. And I always look back and it's so funny. My first retreat was maybe 22 women and about 18 of them were attorneys and about
That's
19 of them were
good.
black, right? And so, and I always just pay attention who shows up into the room initially. And then I go, okay, I see who I'm talking to and I see who's listening,
Mm,
right? And so that was part of how that came about. And from that first retreat, I just remember again noticing, wow, like, you can do 20 classes over some time and then arrive at this place, or you go on retreat for 2 or 3 days. And that last day, you feel like a hard reset button has been
mhm,
pressed. And it's not just what you might experience or kind of the residue you clear in 40 classes or 40 like shorter experiences. It's like 100, right? Um, so that's part of it. And your other question that now I'm like, what was the other question? Oh, what happens when we gather? We exhale more deeply. We're held in that depth. And as you were talking and I was listening to you say what happens when we gather, I thought about Sunday service and
yes.
like what happens there. And I'm thinking about, I might misquote this, the scripture that is where two or three are gathered. And then I'm thinking
Mhm,
about Intozaki Shanji that says where there is a woman, there is magic. And then she talks about that there are more than one. The magic is now amplified. And then I'm thinking about a newfound hobby I've had in the last few years is horseback riding.
mm.
I haven't been to, I know that's a whole nother.
Like, where are we going with this? Where's the horse?
So let me tell you, they they are powerful co-regulators in terms of the nervous
Mm,
system.
yes.
And so the first thing that's really important when we endeavor to retreat with someone is like the quality of the nervous system the space holder is bringing. Right?
Yep.
If you go on retreat with a chaotic person, you start to internalize that chaos. And we've all probably had that kind of experience too. And part of it is like when I retreat with the teachers I retreat, I understand that I'm the beneficiary of their devoted rest practice and how it has supported and primed their nervous system. And then when people come on retreat with me, part of the beneficiary of that. And why did I bring up the horses? Right? Because when I have been with the horses that I ride with, they are so pure and raw in how they respond to my nervous system, right? And it's also what we do, right? Me and you are co-regulating right now.
Yeah.
You might notice if I speed up breathing, something speeds up in you. If I slow down, and vice versa. It's not just me. Sometimes, though, when people are really steeped in their well being and practice, they have a more powerful nervous system. So the room is going to harmonize toward them, right? And I have felt this with the horses because some horses I'm like, oh, you're so steady. And I will stand by it and just be like, I feel the ground in a really specific way. And then, like the young ones that are kind of wild, I can feel that. And also notice how they respond to my nervous system. Like I was riding a horse one day and I started getting anxious about something. The horse was like, hold up. Right. Like what's, like it could
Oh no.
just feel that. And
Mhm.
so the other thing, why am I still talking about horses is
Go ahead.
we are herd and communal beings and people.
Mhm.
And then when we get in there together and you hear sis to the left, exhale, even if you don't exhale out of your mouth, something in you is like, yes, I can exhale too, right? And then for us, and I'm saying us as in, I'm talking right now really specifically about Black, Indigenous, people of color's bodies, women identified as well, that the safety of being surrounded in that circle and with other like there it takes a lot of sense of safety and protection to actually rest for many of us, right?
Mm.
Because whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, we it hasn't been safe to rest, and I'm like, I know that, I hold that. And then though, when we get in the room and we see 20 or 30 of us doing it, we're like, okay, every person in there represents a little bit more. Okay, this might be safe for me. Okay, this is safe for me. And
Mhm.
sometimes when I'm teaching, you probably heard this on retreat, and I'm inviting people to close their eyes, I say out loud, I'm watching the door. My eyes are always open. I'm looking for you, And so part of that is what's happening in the collective nervous system when we get together, and that group sigh that lands in our bodies and says, this is okay. You get to rest too. You can rest too. So there's the power in that number, and there's also the power in finding like a practitioner or a leader who is is practicing imperfectly. Like my practices are not perfect. I'm like, as I endeavor to hold this space for other people, I also know it means I signed up to really be a student of what it is I'm teaching.
Mm.
So again, I hope that answered your
It
question. I backed
did.
my way in and I went on a whole tangent about horses.
No, I love that. So many thoughts. The first thought when you said some people have powerful nervous systems, and this is going back to, the top of the conversation when I was talking about there are things I've done and didn't know that I was doing, and you have given me language and awareness of that. One of the things that my kids say about me um, is I have this space that I'm in right now. We call it the loft because it's at the very top of the house and it's a pretty big room. So I have zones. I have my work zone, my leisure zone, and my like TV zone, etc. And this is where I marinate, as I call it. Right. So I light a candle, I journal, I listen to my sound baths, or I'm listening to jazz as I'm writing and praying and really getting getting back to me. And when I'm in a good space, I do it daily. And the energy in this room, from what they tell me, is palpable. So, like, even when I'm not here, if they come up here, they call the energy Lamo vibes because they call me Lamo, the legendary Amanda Miller Littlejohn.
Okay.
I know, right? Love them. And so they're like, "Ooh, the Lamo vibes are strong." So they can tell when I have been marinated. They can tell when I have been thinking deeply, praying, and just really getting still. And
Mm,
so that really resonates with me. And it even resonated in person to bring your energy into a room where everyone is sharing that same intention. It is palpable. It really
mm,
is palpable. And it made me think about growing up in the black church. And at one of your retreats, I had a really emotional experience on the Sunday when you had your harpist playing and she was playing hymnals.
I
And some of
know.
those songs were songs from that I remember, growing up in my home church, and I was just overcome with emotion because it made me reflect on just that practice of gathering weekly, singing, like all these practices that we don't even know are ancient and healing and are connecting us in a cosmic way, holding hands and singing the songs and humming and call and response. But that harpist played some of the songs from my childhood church, and I could literally feel the spirit of the elders, some of the elders that I grew up with that have passed on. And I felt just something broke open in me. It was so special. It was so
Mm,
special. And I think it was even more special. It was special not just to hear this beautiful harp playing songs that I grew up with in church, but to do that in, as you mentioned, a safe communal space where it was okay for me to just be in my experience and let the tears flow and
mm,
breathe and feel it all. It was such a gift, Octavia. I'm
mm.
telling y'all, if if you can get into retreat with Octavia Raheem, child, I'm still look. I need to take a I need to take a minute. Like I'm reflecting on. I feel rested just thinking about how I rested on that mountain
Well,
with
but
you.
that's because you had an embodied experience about rest. You weren't pontificating about we're not theorizing about rest. We write about rest, but ultimately I feel like your writing, my writing, we're inviting people to find and make ways to have embodied experiences of rest,
Mm,
and because then what happens is you close your eyes in a hectic moment and you go, oh, I remember that rest. And your body's like, I do too. But if you don't have that kind of muscle memory to call on, we just keep calling in the frenetic muscle memory.
mm,
And I know what you mean with the like Angelica Hairstone. That's the harpist with her. She often says, I always say, like, how do you know what to play? She's like, the ancestors speak, and I listen and I play what I hear. And so now you're in the room, like, so now I'm leading a rest practice, but I'm also bringing a sound practitioner who's like, I'm in my own deep listening and hearing and stillness, and then I just move from what I hear. I'm not just up here, ooh, just front brain all the time. What do they want me to play? What's going to get the crowd?
right.
It's just
Any
she,
requests?
you know, you know, and she can do that too, But there's a sacredness to how even in her mastery, she is like, I pause, I get still, I get quiet, I listen, and then I deliver. So you're experiencing someone else who's like, well, here's what I'm offering you, the fruit of my own rest practice.
Mm,
But even as you were talking about it, I could feel my body rocking.
mhm, mhm,
Right. And then I started thinking about humming, all these kind of
mhm.
simple things we can do if we can't build a rest nest and lay down for 20 minutes, we can rock. I know that might look a little weird, so maybe not in the middle of a meeting, right? But it's like we can hum, because I'm always thinking sometimes we're in like a chaotic, hectic, or busy moment, and we're like, I need something. These people are talking to me about rest, but I need something right now. And I'm like, okay, so right now, can you rock a little bit? Right now, can you find your breath? Right now, can you in your mind go back to a place where you did feel supported and have reprieve. Okay, now come back to the present moment with that memory intact. Like what can people do? Because people need immediate relief, and then they also need to have ways to be like, I gotta establish new daily habits as well,
Yes, yes,
you know?
yes. And ah, it's like the more you learn, the more you are aware of the wisdom that has always been around you. And I
Yeah.
think about my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, seeing her sitting in her chair,
Hmm.
rocking and humming her spirituals, and then reading about how humming calms the nervous
That's
system.
right.
And it's so simple, and we make these things so difficult, but like that ancestral wisdom, like I'm sure she saw a grandmother
Hmm.
rocking and humming, or
Yeah.
maybe she just knew to do it naturally, but it's so comforting to think about the people who've come before us and weathered so much, dealt with so much,
Hmm.
survived so much, and to
Hmm.
know that those were some of the practices that were holding them during their lives, and we have access to those as well. It's just ah,
We do. We do. Yeah.
Um, Octavia, you're really wonderful at, giving people simple ways to rest. And so you've talked about the rocking and the rolling and the humming and all the things. I want to give people just a quick balm, something that they can take with them in between the moments of reading Rest is Sacred, because
Yeah.
remember, you're not going to sit and read it all at one time, even though you will want to because it's good. And, it's like yummy. Like you're like, oh, this is good. You got to stop and pace yourself. And in between your reading, what can people do to center themselves and to bring a bit of stillness to their days? What are
Mm.
some of your favorite go to quick or easy accessible? I don't need to be anywhere special. I don't need to have any special equipment. What can I do?
So first I'm gonna acknowledge that my son's outside playing football with his dad. So you might hear you might hear him go, Dad. Or, or if you see my eyes dart, it's because I'm like, is he in the bushes? Random. I just had to name it because I'm sitting here
Okay,
being a mama, right?
right.
And a thing. So I'm sitting, you're sitting. My favorite practice is notice where my hips touch the chair. Like really
Mm,
feel the sensation of my hips touching the chair. And part of that is because sometimes, say you're in a meeting, things start to go up, up, up,
mhm,
and sometimes for necessary reason, I got to lean in, I got to pay attention. And that can feel ungrounded and destabilizing. And so I'm just like, oh, remember there's support beneath me. This sounds very simple, being aware of your feet touching the ground, your ground touching the feet.
mm,
Like you just do that now, you're like, "Oh, okay, right?"
mm.
And I would do that first and then notice my breath, not try to take a deep breath, not manipulate the breath. Just notice where your hips touch the ground, notice your feet and the ground beneath you, and then notice that you're breathing. And then if it feels right after you notice all those things, you can more intentionally take a deep breath in, exhale with a sigh. Sighing resets the nervous system as well. When I taught eighth grade, I was like, middle schoolers love to sigh, and we often tell them that's so rude to go. But it's like the body knows that this is how it's like a little valve we open to release stress, pressure, and tension. And then we are taught to stop doing it because it does kind of appear rude to be like, you can't sit in the middle of someone's presentation and just sigh it out. But you can inhale and slow release the exhale just one time. Like, I would say just do that one time. So to recap, notice body, notice hips, notice feet,
Feet,
notice your breath, and
right.
then inhale fully and exhale really just slowly one time. That takes about 30 seconds. We just have to remember to do it, you know? That's where the real practice is. Let me remember to do that when things are turning up. Um One of my just kind of I'm sitting at my desk workday practices is to pause and drink water. I know that's so simple. But I'm like, I know sometimes we're out here not hydrating.
Mhm.
This is so
Yeah,
simple. Like, I'm like, but the simple will save us,
it
make sure
will.
you're hydrating. But when I pause to drink water, I'm not like, and I'm gonna continue to type or click. I mean, I really stop and drink the water, let it, let myself feel the water, and then I keep going. That takes about
Mhm.
30 seconds to a minute. Um, as well. And then one of my favorite work practices when I'm leading meetings, because I also support organizations with resting at work. One of my favorite things to do to be like, we get to rest at work, y'all, um, is I always start meetings. Everyone's camera off, 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes to go do something you need to do, close a tab. Like, I don't just lurch into the thing. I like to say I start by stopping, which on the front end feels like, okay, we're using time, but when you give people a chance to just close out the mental caches, if that's that word, or, close the mental tabs and the physical tabs, and then say, okay, now let's step more fully into what the task at hand is, it actually saves time every
It
time. So
does.
I start meetings with a actual pause, go do what you need to do, because I don't take for granted that just because we might be in a virtual space, it wasn't hectic getting here. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's even more hectic. And then I also, once everyone's back on and we're in the Zoom room or whatever, I invite people to take 3 breaths. Okay, now let's hit the actual agenda or flow that we're here for. Um, so that's like a workplace, breather.
Mhm.
And then just personally making sure to remember, like, notice my body and notice my breath and actually inhale and exhale. Drink some
Mhm.
water, people. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, your cells will thank you.
I know it seems so simple. But
Our
when
cells
I
are
was
all
when I
chewed
was
up.
in that cycle that got me to burnout, part of what sped up, I was dehydrated.
Mhm.
Like, that's, it was a not just physical exhaustion, I was dehydrated. And part of that was like I didn't feel like I had time to drink water.
Mm.
And have you ever, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. Have you ever been in that kind of loop with yourself and your work and your way of living and
I
being?
have. I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm sitting here nodding and soaking everything you're saying in. I've been there. You work not only with people who come on retreat with you or come to classes with you, but you hold space for leaders around rest. Tell us why, um, especially as a former, high achieving, go, go, go in the burnout cycle professional, what do you see the role of rest being for the leaders that you support and
Mhm.
for this moment that we're in, this huge opening where people are really recognizing that they need to make adjustments and how we are living and working is not working. What's
Yeah.
the role of rest in all of this for the leaders?
Oh, so at first it might start off as I'm really tired. Like, I love what I'm doing. It feels very on purpose. I am making impact, and this is not sustainable. Like, so we might start in that place with just how do I make this more sustainable? And some of it is just like, I'm tired. Can you lead me in these practices? And some of it is like, sometimes I work with people one to one because it's really tender. We don't want to be out there being like, it's me, I'm on the edge of burnout, like, it's not funny. I'm just saying, like, I know that feeling of being like, I need someone who there's a sense of discreetness and privacy around the rest, depending on my profile, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so we start off there sometimes, but ultimately, because now I've been resting with leaders for a while, and I'm like, there are people who it's like, this is just what we do. We've moved from I'm just bone tired to rest is awakening. Oh, wow. Now I can tap into my imagination. Oh, wow. Now I'm remembering dreams and visions. Oh, wow, the quality of my solution making is so much better. I have so much more clarity. Like, one of my leaders is always like, I do personal retreats with people too. and people will come on a one-to-one retreat with me and go, "We just spent time." I thought, some of the things I was trying to map out or start out felt like it was 3, 5 years, but they rested. They got to reset. We weren't really trying to think about anything. We just were like, "Let's explore, let's daydream, let's play, let's be in leisure." And then it's similar to what you said and been like, I was waiting on revelation and it came. And so Einstein says we can't solve a problem from the frequency that created the problem.
Mm.
And what has created the loop of burnout is an exhaustion. We could all write the list. We know that very well. We could recite it. We know it by muscle memory. We know how we got here. And I'm like, rest is the one of the most profound disruptions to the cycle. And then just even a little bit of rest, we start to have access to imagination, which is like we think of it as child's play. I was reading something the other day, and I really wish I could remember. It was a researcher who was like, imagination is the most underutilized resource by leaders. And I'm like, I know that because it's like some of what we're solving for in our lifetimes, we really haven't seen this level of crisis, which means we need some imagination is, you can't see it in reality
Mhm.
yet. And I'm like, we need leaders who are willing to venture over here into the field of imagination, more creative thinking, and then come back from over there and bring it into like a more practical grounded space. But you first have to be able to imagine it. Otherwise, we're just recycling the
Mm.
same stuff that got us in this situation. So it's kind of like a little bit of triage. I feel like sometimes leaders come to me and they're like, "I'm tired and I don't want to quit because I love this." It's not even like I don't like what I'm doing. It's like I actually love it. It's meaningful. I'm answering a call, and goodness gracious, this is overwhelming. Um, but then ultimately, as people get restored and are like, "I'm not so physically tired anymore."
Mhm.
This other thing happens where they start to access clarity and imagination and um, more vibrant thinking, if that
Mm.
makes any sense.
It
And
does.
so, what we need well rested leaders for that. And then the other thing, just on an organizational level, I used to go into organizations and do some wellness work. And
Mm.
I would notice all the time, like the leaders kind of the same people, maybe it was the HR person who brought me in, but I would notice the leaders just kind of like disengaged or whatever. And I also realized part of it was like the vulnerable space that is like kind of closing your eyes, all of that. And maybe that's why they're not doing it
The
with their
truth.
whole team there. And so then I realized I was like, actually, my call is like I want to hold the space for that leader because I also get it. Like I know why your eyes are still opening and why your arms are folded right now. And I also realized that like when the leader's relationship to rest and really has like an embodied buy-in to like, oh, this shifts the way I'm feeling and thinking and showing up and I'm bending time and all these other things start happening as a result of the rest, that is going to change the
Right.
organization or the company. And then we also can get to a place where it's easier to have a conversation about, well, what systems or processes or procedures do we have in place that are contributing to burnout. And so for me it's like deeper than like, oh, okay, this is company wellness.
Mhm.
I'm like, actually, like the leader's nervous system, if we go back to that part, has a profound effect on everything and everybody else. And what happens and um, when they are well, everybody else has more possibility, access, potential to actually be well. So
Mm.
um,
So good.
we need more well-rested leaders. I'm thinking about on a big national stage. I'm like, what happens if we get some of these people out of fight and flight? you know,
Imagine, like, right?
Imagine what
What
could
could we come
happen.
up with?
What could happen if we're not just knee-jerk responding to everything all the time? Yeah.
Ah, Octavia, As you know, I could talk to you all day and all night. And I think, our listeners could listen as well. But I know you have a child to look after, as do I. It's getting late. This has just
Yes.
been a delicious conversation. I'm so excited for your new book, Rest is Sacred, which is a sibling to my book, The Rest
Yes.
Revolution. I'm just excited for this moment and this season, this conversation around rest and the openness that has been created for people to really realize um, the rest that they need and deserve. So
That's
thank you
right.
for being a part of that and for offering your gifts and your talents and your words to help heal people. I know so many people are going to be healed by your book. Can you tell people where they can find more about you and anything that you want them to know that you may have coming up?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the Rest Revolution.
Mhm.
That title is like, this is it. This is the movement. Thank you. Um, you can find me at octaviaraheem.com. You can find the book at restisacred.com. I'm on all the LinkedIn, Instagram, all the places as Octavia Raheem. And get the book, get 2 or 3 copies. Don't
Yeah.
just read the book, actually rest with it and invite someone into the space of rest with you. Um, that's really my like challenge and invitation to folks is to like gather 2 or 3 more people and say, let's brunch and rest, not just let's go to brunch.
Yes.
Like that's like one of my like dreams. I'm like, I dream of a world where we brunch and also rest together. Like, how do we make this more normal and acceptable and
Mhm.
just kind of what we do? Um, and I'm having a day retreat January 12th. It's just a day. It's a day of rest. We have work days. I'm like, how about a day of rest?
Yeah.
That's in North Georgia. And then September 18th through the 21st in 2025, I'm having a 4 day, I call it a rest revival.
Ooh.
I know. It came to me while we were sitting on the last retreat. I'm doing my own listening, and I have a secret rest club called Rest Revival, but I hadn't thought about Rest Revival as this 4 day long. It's a retreat space, but it's an experience. And um,
It's like old school church revival. I get it. I love
basically,
it. I love
and so
it.
that's happening in September. Yeah, and all of this will be everywhere I am and on OctaviaRaheem.com.
Well,
Yeah.
you all heard it. You go to her links, go to her web presence, follow her, get engaged in her work. She will bless you and your life. Get the book, read the book, savor it, do the 30-second practice she advised, do all the things, and check back with us. Message us to let us know how it's going and how
Hmm.
this interview, this conversation, and Octavia's tools and books are supporting you on your journey. Thank you, Octavia, for
Thank
joining
you.
me. This was amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who joined us as well for listening. We will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.